Hi, Lawrence LeBrocq, Managing Partner of Garces, Grabler, and LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory, Triumph Over Tragedy. Today we have the pleasure of having Michael Chase here. He is a survivor of the 2013 bombing at the Boston Marathon. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the person that Michael is, how he's overcome this adversity in his life, and what he's doing in the community, and how he's making the world a better place a little bit at a time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I want to just talk about that day in 2013.
Yes, sir.
What happened at the Boston Marathon from your perspective, what you saw, what you heard, and the aftermath?
Yeah, at the time I was a school teacher. I was working in special education, and Marathon Monday is celebrated on Patriots Day. And in that time in Massachusetts, we all have the day off, so there's no school going on, and it's the first day of our spring break. So that Monday, for years, I'd make my way down to the finish line to just celebrate everything the Boston Marathon represents. So that year, same as every other, I got on a packed commuter rail in Beverly, Massachusetts, and took the 35-minute ride into the city. It made my way down to the finish line, and I wasn't really sure truly where I was going to land that day. It's always an open book and see what was going to happen. It's a day celebrated with family and friends and adult drinks and hopefully good weather, and that's the idea. And that day was no different. It was about 63 degrees and a mixture of sun and clouds. We made our way down there, and I happened to see a friend from high school on the commuter rail who mentioned a place called Atlantic Fish Company and told me he was going to meet some friends and family there, and he invited me along. So that was the goal. So when I got to Boston, I had to punch it into my GPS to find the restaurant, and we made my way down to Atlantic Fish to celebrate the day, which was amazing. And then just before 2:30 in the afternoon, I was on the phone with my brother. It was a great day in Boston. We had the marathon, obviously the race was happening, about 35,000 people taking to the streets. And the Bruins happened to have a decent hockey team at the time. Right. So they were dropping a puck later on that night for a playoff game. So my brother and his wife were fortunately able to grab tickets for that. So they were coming down to meet us. And we were just kind of hanging out, and I was on the phone with him when we heard the first explosion, about 200 yards down, right at the finish line. And as I was on the phone with him, it kind of caught us off guard. We didn't know what was going on. My brother had posted up at a bar just outside the Boston Garden called the Harp, and he was waiting there to figure out what his next steps were going to be, and he could hear it through the phone. So everyone's attention was turned to my left as the raceway made its way towards the finish line, and I could see a plume of smoke coming out over the street. And I knew something wasn't right. It was 2:30. The elite runners were long gone. Right. So it was just your average day people. So a celebratory cannon just didn't fit the mold. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny how your brain starts to play tricks on you a little bit. Sure. So the biology kicks in. People are getting concerned, but everyone's kind of drawn to the sound and now what we can see happening. And then within 12 seconds, the second blast happened, about 15 feet to my left.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So it was, I call it my best, worst day. It was crazy. And sitting in front of a restaurant that serves $50, $60 steaks, all of a sudden it was turned into a third world country. The trauma, the impact, the ringing in my ears from the explosion was incredible. The blast knocked me off my feet. The taste and feel of sulfur was everywhere. It was all I could breathe and taste. It became the air. My senses were overtaken. And that's when kind of the day got even crazier.
So after you hear the explosion, you feel the explosion, you're tasting sulfur. What's going on around you?
Yeah. In the immediate aftermath of that explosion, I found myself on the ground. I covered two of the women that I was with, and for the first time in my life, I thought I was going to die. But it's crazy how biology, some senses start to heighten. As you can't hear anything, I could see a little bit better. Things started to slow down around me, and the world started to go a little slower. I was concerned about a second or a third now explosion.
Sure.
And that was the primary objective, was to get away from there as I could. I moved the two women that I was with into a small alcove between the two restaurants. And I was trying to wait for the dust to settle because you couldn't see anything because the smoke and the clouds of smoke had just filled the air. So as soon as that had settled within a few seconds, that's when I first got my first glance to Boylston Street and the trauma and the disaster that it created. An interesting part of the story was, as a high school athlete, I had torn my ACL my senior year in high school. Looking to play college soccer, the Division I level. I lost my scholarship, so it was the end of my career. I eventually tore it 2 more times, and after my third ACL reconstruction, I landed on blood thinners. I had thrown blood clots to both lungs, and it almost killed me. So here I am standing on Boylston Street on Coumadin,
right,
15 feet from an explosion. And luckily, the planter that I was standing next to was a stack of cinder blocks that was encased in plywood, and there's some beautiful springtime flowers there that separated the restaurant that I was at from the restaurant next door. And that took the whole blast. Nothing from those pressure cookers went above 2.5 feet, so that thing saved my life. If I even cut my head shaving or cut my face shaving, it would bleed for hours and hours. So I was very blessed that I was standing where I was standing. And as I said, as soon as that smoke cleared, I got a pretty good understanding of what was going on around me, the impact that it took on all those people that were out just enjoying the day like I did. That's when you could start to hear more than just the ringing. You could hear the people screaming, you could see the sights. And I knew that we needed to move or we were going to be in trouble.
So you moved the ladies and you got out of the area?
I was standing next to that restaurant. The front door is kind of accordion. The glass door is opened up, so it brings the outside inside. So the patio where we were standing. But just before that, the temperatures dropped a little bit, so they just closed it. So to get back into the restaurant, I had to run across the face of the restaurant to get those girls inside. And that's what I did. Told them to keep their heads down. I covered them, and I moved them across. The staff from Atlantic Fish Company were unbelievable. These weren't medics or trained physicians or anything like that. They were wait staff, kitchen staff. And they came to triage and help. They were passing napkins or anything they could get outside, back outside to help people out, whether it was tablecloths or linens or anything to help stop bleeding and triage the wounded. And when I got to the face of the restaurant, I was looking to my left. And that's when I noticed that there was a lot of people hurt, especially a little girl. Unbeknownst to me, I had left my phone on the entire time on an open mic with my brother. So here's my brother, who's 2.5 years older than me. He's my protector. He's been my go-to person my entire life. He's listening to this live unfold from just a couple miles away, trying to figure out how he's going to get to his little brother to help him. And at one point, what I don't remember, but he reminded me, was I took the phone out of my back pocket and I said, "Brad, there's children that hurt. Get out of the fucking city." And I hung up the phone. I placed it back in my back pocket. And after I pushed the two women inside, I turned around. I saw the first victim. He was mobile. He was conscious. He was alert. But it looked like his pants and his shirt had just been blown off his body. But everything seemed to be, superficial wounds, nothing life-threatening. I was able to guide him to the restaurant where he met some of the staff members that were accepting people inside to help out. And that's when I made my way to the street to help.
And there was a lot of triage there.
A lot of problems, yeah. There was a lot of people that were just enjoying another day with their family and friends, and in a second, their life was changed forever.
Right, and a lot of them didn't get to see another day.
That's correct.
So you had to deal with the trauma of that. Talk about the aftermath and the effect it had on you. Even though you survived that day, was there survivor guilt? Was there PTSD? How did you deal with that?
Absolutely. Because as I made my way to the street, that's when the real work started to kick in a little bit. I found a young girl. She was 6 years old, and she was missing her leg from just below her knee down. She was with an off-duty firefighter from Lynn, Massachusetts, who was a stranger to me before that day. And he was at Abe and Louie's next door doing the same thing I was doing, celebrating the day and enjoying friends and family. And I happened to find him kneeling next to the little girl in the middle of Boylston Street that was injured. So I removed my belt and used it as a tourniquet to try to stop the bleeding and triage her. And he made the determination, as somebody that had combat experience. He was in the United States military. He served for the Army. He was a great hero to run to and run into in that moment. If you need somebody to help lead you there, that's a great guy to have on your side. So we made the determination that we needed to move the little girl. So he said to me, "Don't let go of the tourniquet. I'm going to scoop her up. I'm going to have to move her." Part of the Boston Emergency Operations Plan is to not allow everyone to rush into the city, right down to the site. You don't want to be on top of the epicenter of the blast in case of a third or a fourth explosion. So they had held those people and the responding officers and EMTs and paramedics up a little bit. So we made the determination that we had to move her. So we scooped up Jane and we ran her several hundred yards towards the Prudential Center, if you're familiar with the city. And that's when we passed her off to the waiting personnel that was getting ready to transport her. Her father and oldest brother were in tow. And when we got up there, we made the determination that Dad was going to stay with his daughter and I would take his son for just a few minutes until they could get her settled in the ambulance to leave. And then I would reunite father and son. And when I got back, the father kept screaming, "My son, my son, my son," pointing back to the epicenter of the blast. And that's when I just ran. I ran back into the fray. When I got there, I realized now that his son was Martin Richard, who was our youngest victim that day. He was 8 years old. And I and a few other people on the street that day tried to do everything we could to save his life, but our efforts were fruitless. He was just in such rough shape. So those are the things that you carry with you now. So you talk about PTSD and trauma. I really, really struggled in the days and weeks and months after. I was working in a therapeutic alternative high school for kids with social emotional behavioral disabilities. So I was surrounded by people at my workplace that had experience. I'd been 1,000 trauma trainings and how to deal with kids that have PTSD and gave advice to kids who had suffered from panic attacks and anxiety and things like that. Things that I had never experienced in my personal life, but I'd been through a million trainings on it and worked in that industry. So I was fortunate that when I came back to work the following week, I was surrounded by people that understood kind of what I went through, whether or not they lived it themselves. But I was going back to a great place to work. I wasn't going to a construction site. I wasn't going to a place where no one had any experience working with people that were struggling. So I got a lot of good advice and a lot of people in my life that could support me. But I was really struggling. Even though everything might have looked all right on the outside, on the inside I was falling apart.
Well, like you said, it's great that you had the support there of people that understood, but it probably made you an even better teacher, because now you not only had the training, but you actually lived it yourself.
Absolutely.
And then you could actually relate and empathize even more. So talk about the future and where it led you with regard to your teaching, with regard to your coaching, and your life.
Yeah. I call it my best worst day. I think it was an experience that changed me forever. But just like with any experience, it's what you do in the aftermath that kind of come out of it. I knew I needed the professional help. I had to go start seeing a therapist for the first time. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't doing any of those things. So through EMDR therapy that they were using with a lot of men and women, service women coming back from overseas, that helped me get back on my feet to get a normal routine again. But like as you said, it allowed me to use this as some example of working with kids that were struggling. It was just a new perspective and a new way to do it. And I initially got into that field with the intention of being a police officer. I wanted to be a cop since I was 5 years old. And I found myself working in special education as just a placeholder until I could get on the police department. And when I went in and interviewed for the job, when I met with the director of the program, I had told him that. I said, we're only going to be here for a little bit. This is just a small stayover before I get into the world of law enforcement. But due to that diagnosis with the blood clots and the Coumadin, that kept me off the job. So I was told eventually that I would never be a cop in any state in the United States. So we had to make the determination that special education was going to be my landing spot. I was fortunate to be there. I loved working with those kids. It did give me the opportunity to coach high school sports. Right. I coached high school varsity soccer for over 20 years, able to connect with kids. It was far less about X's and O's and wins and losses. It was about developing young men and giving them the life skills that they need to be successful fathers and in the workplace and in the community. And I found that to be some of the best days ever, is working with those guys.
I would agree. I coached football, baseball, and wrestling for 15 years. Yeah. And just the life lessons, people don't understand when I tell them, I don't give a damn if we win a Pop Warner football game. It's all about teaching these kids life lessons. Absolutely. So it's great to hear you parrot that, the same sentiment that I had while I was doing it.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I love to win.
Of course you do. And it's hard to teach. It's hard to teach kids hard work pays off if they don't win. Correct. So you do want them to win. Yeah. But it's more for them than it is for you, because in the scope of things, a Pop Warner football game or wrestle match really doesn't mean too much, but it's the toughness that you can teach and instill, and the teamwork and the camaraderie that really they can carry with the rest of their lives. Without a doubt.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to impact the kids on that level. It's a great opportunity. I look back at some of my coaches from my youth days, and I still carry a lot of what they taught me today.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. So that was kind of the plan, was to be a police officer when that kind of ended. But when my therapist told me in the aftermath of the race and everything I experienced in Boston was, don't read every article, don't watch every video, get your head off of YouTube. And that was the worst patient ever, because I did all those things. I watched every video I could. I wanted to read every article. I wanted to know everything about that day, all the people involved and everything there was. So from a therapeutic standpoint, it might not have been the best perspective, the best plan moving forward. But what it did was it kind of lit a fire under my ass. I was watching a YouTube video, and then I realized that there was a uniformed police officer with Jane before I got to her. So within a few seconds of the blast, a uniformed officer was with a 6-year-old girl in the middle of Boylston Street who had lost her leg. And by the time I got to her, within less than a minute after the blast, he was gone. I don't know where he went. And this isn't a personal attack on him or a judgment of him in any way. I just don't know what would be more critical than a 6-year-old who lost her leg in the middle of the city. So I used that. I said, there's no chance that this guy is going to be a cop and I can't be. So I went to my hematologist and I fought and I fought and I fought. And they kept telling me no and no and no. And that door kept closing and closing and closing. Yeah. So I had to go seek other opinions. So I saw 5th, 6th, 7th opinions. I finally found a cardiologist out of Salem, Massachusetts, who introduced me to Zoom before I even knew what Zoom was. We're talking 2013. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, I was in a Zoom call with a bunch of physicians, cardiologists, hematologists from across the country. And they made a plan and came up with a plan to get me off the medication. So that opportunity came. When I finally came off the med, I called the Danvers Police Department, where I currently am employed, and I said, I'm off the medication. I'm still ready to go. And then the opportunity came, and I was able to get on the police department.
Fantastic.
So I never would have done that. That never would have happened, right? So my goal of being a cop since I was 5 years old was derailed when I was younger. It was a medical problem, and I accepted that no as the final answer until this experience. And now I have a great opportunity. I played cops and robbers for 2 years at night, working around, running around, and then the opportunity came up where two high schools were merging. We have an agricultural school and a technical high school in town. And they were merging and build one big high school. And the population started to grow rather quickly. There was a lot of draw for there, where there wasn't in the past. Career tech ed and agricultural schools were always a throwaway. Any kid that couldn't make it at a four-year university, if you weren't going to go someplace, electricians, plumbers, those were all looked at
Right.
differently. Today, it's one of the most competitive high schools in Massachusetts. We say no to 1,500 kids every year that want to come and sit in electrical class or plumbing or HVAC or dental or cosmetology. We have a restaurant on campus. The place is pretty impressive. So after doing 2 years of police work, the opportunity came up. I put my name in there and I applied. And because of all my experience working in education and coaching, it was a great fit. So I've been a school resource officer now. This is my 8th year on that campus. The place continues to grow. We have 2,000 students. It's a great place. I love going to work every day.
So define what a school resource officer is.
Yeah, so I think on its most basic level, I'm the bridge or the liaison between the police department and the school community. I tell kids all the time and families, my job and responsibility is to keep you out of handcuffs, make sure you never meet a judge. And if I can do that, that's a great thing.
Right.
And if that happens, if it's so we can't avoid those things, then it's my job to support the child and the family through that process as well, regardless of which side they're on, victim or aggressor or whatever it might be. And to be honest with you, I'm in charge and responsible for the overall safety and well-being of everybody on campus. And like I said there, we have 2,000 students, 250 employees, and about 150 visitors a day on campus, whether they're coming to visit our restaurant or our auto clinic. We have a full-fledged vet clinic on campus as well. So there's a lot of responsibility there in a large place. Right. But my responsibility, to be honest with you, at its core, the number one thing I try to do is build relationships with every kid in the building. And I think that's the most important part of my job.
That's incredible. It's a great segue. So you're no longer a police officer?
Well, I am. So I'm still employed by the town of Danvers as a police officer. Just my assignment is in the building Monday through Friday, 7 to 3.
That's great.
So I have the best cop schedule there is. Not a lot of cops that get weekends and holidays off. No. But besides that, it's a great landing spot for me because I think it aligns with my life's work, and it's a perfect opportunity to get back to the community and continue to do that work.
So what does the future hold for you?
I'm not sure. I'm 46. I tell my daughter, who's a junior in high school, who's thinking about college and not sure what she wants to do. She actually goes to school there. She's in the dental program and loves it, but she's not sure if she wants to study dental or get into business, maybe sales. She's not sure if she wants to be a teacher. And I laugh because at 46, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Right. My dad used to say that when he was in his 60s. I still don't know what I want to do with my life.
Right, yeah. So maybe I'll figure it out one day. I've used this opportunity in this experience that I had to go out and now I'm speaking on a national level. I go out and, whether it's a breakout session at a large conference or a keynote. I've also been to HR conferences and other things to teach to schools and students and staff and parents, a variety of people, and just share my story about resilience and trauma and the impact that we can have. And I look at it as my best worst day, and it depends on how we're going to take those experiences and what we do with that opportunity afterwards. So I enjoy getting out there and sharing my story and talking to crowds and audiences and hoping every opportunity I get to meet somebody, just leave them a little bit better than they found it.
So tell me some of the impact that you know that you've had on other people because of what you've gone through and you're coaching with them, whether it's coach on a ball field or whether it's mentoring them in the classroom or with a problem outside. If you have any examples you can give, without giving names, of course, just of how you've helped some people.
I think I look back at my early days when I was 22 years old, sitting in my office. So my job at the school initially was I was a teacher. I was doing, teaching a 6th grade curriculum to high school students because academics was very low down on the line of priorities in these kids' days. I have 6 or 7 students that are doing life sentences for murder. It was a really tough place to work, and that gave me an opportunity to kind of connect with some kids that didn't have connection many places in the world. And I've taken that with me, and I knew that the importance. And when somebody finds out that I work in a school and as a cop, first question everyone asks me is, how can we combat school safety? What can we do about these active shooter situations? What can we do to make sure that our children are safe every day when they go off, either in the car or on the bus to go to their schools? And I think the biggest thing that we can do is, like I said earlier, is the relationship component of all things. So every student at my school gets a survey. It's a quick question. It asks, who's your trusted adult? Who's your trusted adult on this campus, and who's your trusted adult in the community? And we compile all that data, and we make sure that everybody has somebody in their life they can go to when they're struggling. Or, just as important, if there's somebody else. So if you were having a hard time and I knew it, could I take that information and bring it someplace? Could I go to a trusted person in my building, in my community, whether it's a coach, somebody at your church, your parents, whoever it might be, and do that work? And that stems from a lot of the things I did early on in my career. And I just knew that those kids that didn't really have anybody in their life needed somebody. So now I can go back and I actually work with one of the cops where he's on the job with me, but I was his high school soccer coach. And during the academy, they asked him to write a paper about somebody that impacted their life in a positive way. So he had called me years ago and asked me if I could be the subject of his paper, and he shared that with me. So just knowing that we have the opportunity to take kids that sometimes feel like the world's working against them and give them that opportunity to know that they can come to your door and you can work through some difficult stuff with them. So my last years at the school, the alternative high school, that was the role I found myself in as the dean of discipline / student sport coordinator. I dealt with all the suspensions, the detentions, the expulsions, but more importantly, what I did behind the scenes was build relationships with those kids to make sure that if we did find ourselves in a bad spot, we could work together to figure it all out. Right. I mean, my pledge to everybody that I meet now, and even through talking, large audiences, small audiences, one-to-one in my office with kids, whatever it might be, I want everybody to know that they're not alone. And if I go back and talk to my own 16-year-old self, I think that would have been the best advice I could ever given myself, is you're not alone. There's enough people out there in the world that are willing to help you. And I just want to be that person for somebody else. So if a kid feels as though they're struggling, I'm just a dumb cop, is what I tell them. I'm honest with them. Right. So I don't have all the answers in the world. So I'm not going to carry this and make sure that I'm the one that's going to try to fix everything. But I promise you I'll turn over every stone I can to make sure that we can get the help for these kids, or the adults, whoever it is that needs it.
No, it's amazing that some of the people that can help you through your life, in my book, I thanked one of my coaches. He was a guy that got me a scholarship down to South Carolina. And it just got me out of the element and environment that I was in, which wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. And I could have turned out to be one of those people that you were arresting. But, it changed my life by going down south and seeing a different culture, a different way of life, and how they did things a lot differently down there. And from there, things turned out pretty well for me, going to law school from there and all. But it's just one person can make that difference, which is so important. And it seems like you've been that person for a lot of individuals, which is just fantastic.
That's the goal.
And that's a great goal. Well, if you had something to tell kids, parents that need to overcome adversity or to deal with life, what would some of the advice or the best advice you could give somebody?
Yeah, I think we can control the things we can control, right? Those are the things we should be worried about. There's going to be a lot of things that life throws at us that we're not ready for. But like I had said to you, the number one advice is you're never alone. We don't have to take on any of life's difficulties, toughest days, relationship stuff, external factors. We don't have to do that. And I think the way I was raised, and I think we're getting better at as a society, and I'm sure you can attest to this at our age, I think it's, especially the young men, right? I think that we've done a terrible job at teaching our generation, my generation, yours, that you're not alone. And it's okay to work through some of your problems and talk about stuff. I remember being a little kid and it was always like, hey, pull your big boy pants up, boys don't cry, let's get moving.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was just the culture. And I think that the more work we can do to get away from that, to let people know that, no, it's not just suck it up. It's let's work together to get through this, to solve this problem. Right. So we can use those skills in other areas of our life too, to make sure that, on our worst days, that we know it's not the end. And there's a lot of reasons to give up in life at times. Things throw us. We were talking earlier about a bunch of different, before we came on air, about situations that people are dealt, and it's not fair at times. Right. Whether you get a sick mom or a sick child, or someone's in a wheelchair, or you have a disability, or whatever it might be. My girlfriend who's with us today, she has an 8-year-old son who has autism, and I love that kid. I'll do anything for him. But is it fair that he's suffering from this disability and he struggles with these things every single day? No, but what we can do is we can make it the best possible outcome.
Sure. By
providing love and support and doing everything we can do to better ourselves, to figure out how to best provide him services and take care of him and love him, because it isn't always fair.
That's right.
But it's how we look at every circumstance. And he's going to live a long, fruitful life, and he brings such joy to our family, and we're blessed to have him there. But from the outside, people would look at that and say, oh, what a terrible thing. Right. But I enjoy his brain. He never forgets a birth date or a phone number. We were out the other night and somebody was looking for a phone number. Like, if Chase was here, we could figure this out. Yeah. But it's things like that, it's how do we attack every day and wake up every day and just look to go out. And I think that the underlying thing for everybody is to understand that you're never alone.
It's great, because I just had a gentleman named Pete Agostini on, and he has 2 kids that suffer from disability. And he is such an incredible father, great lawyer, great father, spends so much time with his kids, and you can see he has so much joy with his children. And, everyone's different. Some kids are going to be very special in different ways. Some are going to be very intelligent, very vibrant. Some may have challenges, but then we all do. You have to see past that and see what people can bring to the table. We're talking about Eric LeGrand and how that guy always had quadriplegic, always has a smile on his face. Goes around the country like you, as a motivational speaker. Just the epitome of triumph over tragedy, because it's what you make of it. What is tomorrow going to bring? How do you make that situation better? So I think you're doing that for a lot of people, and you're opening up a lot of eyes and a lot of love there, that you're giving to a lot of people. So I respect that, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
Going back to the bombing at the marathon, and you were basically saved by almost a miracle with the cinder blocks in a potter, basically protected you, especially when you're on blood thinners, so you would have bled out in minutes there on the scene. So you realize that tomorrow's promised to no one. How has that changed your perspective? How does that affect you now in your life?
I think as you hit it on the head. Tomorrow's never granted to anybody. So with that, I don't take anything for granted. I take a lot more risks in my personal life in terms of, I shouldn't say risk, but if I was going to be tight with finances or whatever it might be, I'm going to take that vacation.
Sure.
I started taking my daughter now once a year, just her and I. We go to someplace warm, 4 or 5 days. It's something that we're going to do for the rest of her life and my life, to make sure we have that reset to connect. And I am that person that tries to make every situation, every encounter I have with somebody, I want them to leave with a good impression. As a police officer and the opportunity, you hold a lot of weight. You pull over a vehicle. My goal and objective every single time I sit with somebody, whether it's in the school setting, if I'm in uniform, wherever it might be, is to make sure they leave with the understanding that I'm going to be reasonable, I'm going to be fair, I'm going to be honest. And if I can teach somebody something through that moment, that's more important to me than the other outcome. I'm not one to write a lot of money fine tickets. I want people to understand that if you're going to go fast, then there's opportunity there that bad things can happen. But I want them to leave that opportunity and that engagement with me to say, wow, that guy was fair, he was honest, and he took care of us in this situation. And I do that in my personal life in terms of I won't take anything for granted. I tell people I love them all the time, because I know that tomorrow's not guaranteed. And to be the father of my daughter who's 16, that's the greatest blessing in the world. And I can't imagine a day without her or her not having me there. So I make sure that I love her as hard as I can, provide for her in every way possible, and just try to be there for her. And to make sure that when she fills out that survey at school, she chooses me as her trusted adult, somebody that she can come to and turn to, and make sure that she knows that I'll be there for her every single day, regardless of the circumstances. Because she's going to make mistakes too. We all do at 16. I think what we're built for at 16.
Right.
So it's important that she can, trust me and rely on me to help get her through those things, even though I'm her dad. And sometimes I'm the cop in the building that works with her. So I think, to sum up the question, it's I won't take anything for granted moving forward.
That's fantastic. If somebody wants you to come and speak for them, to present for them, how do they find you?
The best and easiest way to do it is to come visit my website, michaelchasespeaks.com. And on there, you'll see a bunch of different things and the different talks I give. And you can fill out the form there. And I'll be in touch. And hopefully we can work together in the future.
Just out of curiosity, what's your favorite thing to speak on?
I enjoy engaging a multitude of different audiences. But I like talking about the work that I do in the school in relation to everything that I learned at the marathon, about trauma and resiliency and overcoming obstacles and understanding that your worst day doesn't have to be living through a terrorist attack. It could be the separation or divorce of your parents. For a 6-year-old, it could be losing your home pet. So everybody's worst day is theirs. It's your whole. It's what you hold for you. And to let people know that we can get through it. You're going to come out better on the other side, and you control your own destiny. And if you can't do it on your own, there's some people out here that are going to help us make it through it. I never would have been able to be where I am today if it wasn't for the people in my life, professional and personal. They're able to help me guide their therapists, Like I said, I would sit in my office with kids for a long time, kids that had been through some horrific, horrific things, case files you'd never want to read. And I would talk to these individuals and give them great advice about seeing therapists and going to meet somebody and talk to somebody professional that can help work through that. But in my own personal life, I never had done that until this instance. And I know that without the therapist, without the work, without doing any of that stuff, I wouldn't be a successful person in my life, in my personal life, my professional life, because life is hard.
Yeah, that's some great advice, because my generation and your generation, we were not taught that way. We were taught to deal with our problems and handle them ourselves.
Right.
So it's great to hear from a grown man, professional, that can say it's okay to get help.
Absolutely.
It's okay to talk to somebody. So if you need to talk to somebody or you want to hear somebody talk, please contact Michael Chase.